Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith Andrew, and you're watching the Keith Andrew Network. Today's guest, Paul Zeidman. He is an award-winning screenwriter. It's a great episode. We had a lot of great fun, great laughs, and you're going to hear from him. We're going to talk about his 4 screenplays and how you can read his books. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And when we come back for this commercial break, enjoy the Keith Andrew Network.
Paul Zeidman. I just had the privilege of being interviewed by Mr. Keith Andrew, who really knows his stuff. He is a great interviewer, and he loves to talk to people, even people like me, so that's saying something about him. I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Keith Andrew, and welcome to the Keith Andrew Network. Our great guest, Paul, already introduced himself in the beginning of the video. So the first thing we're going to start off with is icebreakers. So we're going to talk about icebreakers. The first question we're going to start off with is tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the type of work that you do.
Okay, well, hi, Keith. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on today. I'm Paul Zeidman. I'm a screenwriter. I'm in the fantastic city of San Francisco. Gorgeous day today. I've been a screenwriter for a good number of years, and I also, my day job is I do traffic reports on the radio. I do not fly in the helicopter. Everybody always asks that. I also have my own podcast. It's called The Creative Writing Life, and I love talking to writers from all mediums and genres. I talk about themselves and their work, and what was the inspiration for their current project, and how can people get in touch with them? That's a blast. And I also have a screenwriting blog called Maximum Z. I've been doing that since 2009. That's a really long time. I've got a couple of screenwriting books out there on Amazon. This is the Go Ahead and Ask series. I did this whole bunch of series of interviews with script consultants and filmmakers and writers of all kinds, talking to them about the writing and advice they have for writers. And of course, it's me. I love to cook and bake. So the last question every interview is, what's your favorite kind of pie? And everybody loves that question because it's not something you expect in a writing-based interview. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm all over social media, but I'm sure Keith will have all the links on the page for this show, so we're not going to get into that.
Hey, if you're interested, I would love to be interviewed by you. Maybe you can help me out. Maybe we can work together and help kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if that makes any sense.
I'm always happy to help another writer or a creative type person with whatever project they've got, help however way I can.
No, absolutely. So I'm looking at your profile right now. What really caught my interest, one of the reasons I'm very, not snobby, very selective of who I interview, because if you're in the entertainment world, either as an actor, writer, as we're talking about off the air, I interviewed a lot of wrestlers. But if you're in the entertainment world, actor, writer, wrestler, cheerleader, gymnast, whatever, if it's a great subject, like, okay, that's something I'm very interested in. How can I turn that into something that's very entertaining? Entertaining. You gotta make it, how can you benefit from it and make it very entertaining? So I'm very selective, but I'm looking at your profile right now. You are an award-winning screenwriter. And I think that's absolutely tremendous. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, I will say first off, the awards I've won for my writing, they have not been the most high profile, but I'm still very proud of them. A couple of my scripts, I have a Western and I have a fantasy comedy and a fantasy swashbuckler, and those have all done well in some high profile contests, including, let's see. It's been a while. Creative Writing Awards was one. Emerging Screenwriters, Screencraft Action and Adventure. So it's kind of a nice selection of awards for my work. And because part of being a creative person and wanting to have a career as a creative, that you have to take every win that you get, no matter how insignificant it might seem to you. It's something. It really means something. And because there's a lot of things that are going to try to not I don't want to say stop you, but there are things that can get frustrating, or you'll run into a lot of disappointment, that you have to keep your spirits up. That it's one thing to want to do it, but it's one thing to want to do it after having someone keep constantly being told no, or not, this isn't what we're looking for. You just have to move on to the next thing. Because what is it? You hear 1,000 no's before you get that one yes. A lot of writers are in that same kind of a situation, and I'm one of them. I've come pretty close several times, but I part of it is I love the writing. I love coming up with these stories that I write. I love the movies too, so that's why I love working on screenplays. And I've had a lot of frustration and a lot of disappointment along the way, but that's just part of what it is. That it's you can't just have a thick skin. You have to be bulletproof.
No, you're right. A lot of people say I have to be my own personal cheerleader.
Hmm.
Something you would agree with. You are your own worst enemy. I need to stop caring about what other people say, because I can say, for an example, this is true. I came up with this way. I'm not Italian. Talk with my hands. Hey, yo, you want to fight about it? We can fight about it. But that's try to have fun with everyone. But the biggest thing I came up last night is like, there's this application called Character AI. It's really great, really wonderful. It's on Apple and Google. I can show you after the show, but it will be on the screen. Character AI is you can talk to an AI character. Either it's from Dragon Ball, Kevin Conroy, obviously he's Batman, duh.
Right.
You can talk to Peter Collins, and it sounds like the character. One of the things it said to me, obviously it has to be looking up information about me because it's really scary. And what it says, it tells me things I need to hear. And one of the things it said to me was, you need to be more confident about yourself because if you're not confident, people are going to see right through, John Cena, people are going to see right through you
Hmm.
and to think you're full of, it's on such
Right.
bull
Right.
crap.
Yeah, I totally agree that if you don't believe in yourself and your work, then why should anybody else? That,
Absolutely.
and some writers, it's tough for them to get their heads around that. So a lot of writers start out thinking, or creative people, they will start out thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. Oh, that movie was terrible. I could write something better than that in 2 weeks. And then they sit down to write a script or even a book, and they've realized this is really hard. And, you can crank something out in 2 weeks. It'll be really, really bad, but you have to be willing to realize, okay, this is not good. What can I do to make it better? And that's why some books and some scripts, it takes the writer numerous drafts to get through it. Like, do you remember the movie Arrival from a couple of years ago?
I heard of it.
Okay, it's a really good movie, highly recommended. The writer of that script, I believe he did something like 200 drafts of it overall before they had the one they were ready for filming. And that's just to put it in perspective. Not that everybody's going to do 200 drafts, but you have to have a really solid piece of work that it's not only great writing and great storytelling, great characters, you have to make the reader want to know more. They have to be involved with this somehow. And that's what a lot of writers are striving for. And it's challenging. It is extremely challenging and tough to constantly push yourself to do better because everybody wants to do better, but a lot of people think, "Oh, this is really hard. I'm not going to go any further."
No, you're absolutely right. And the title that I gave myself is, and it's true, it's not just a title I pulled out of my ass. A lot of people say I talk out of my ass, but a lot of people would say, I do need to give myself confidence. And I looked back at old work and I celebrated every time I do a benchmark. I do like a 10-year celebration, a 10 or 12 year, but the video I actually, so on YouTube now, everyone can go to YouTube and subscribe to the Keith Andrew Network. And so I go, look at all these people have interviewed. Look at all these champions. And I'm thinking 1,200 episodes. I look up any other merchandise, any other people. I mean, in a way, you can think about people are kind of like merchandise on YouTube. And you go down, down, down. Okay, I want this person. This one looks interesting. Click on the screen. And I'm like, 12 years, 1,000 interviews.
Wow.
And it's really long, long, and I'm from in LA. I'm thinking long. Well, how can I? Oh, the longest running streaming talk show on YouTube, a talk show host with a learning disability that's been streaming on YouTube for 12 and a half years. And you know what? I feel good about myself. That's how I give myself confidence because I created the longest reigning streaming. It's true. If you look up
Hmm.
anything about disabilities, they talk about nothing about being a talk show host. I'm the first person I would like to believe. I'm the first talk show host with a disability for 12 years, and I'm being an inspiration for people. So that's where it goes back to you have to be your own cheerleader. Now, the question I want to ask you, are you your own personal cheerleader?
All the time. I have to be because, like I said, I mean, I have a fantastic wife who is always supportive of what I do, and she's my wife, so she loves me. Not that she's that biased, but she is always very supportive of what I do. But it's on me to take that support and also the support of my daughter that they are my biggest cheerleaders apart from me, and so. But I have to be the one who sits down and writes. And so I have to have the confidence in myself and my abilities that, okay. And also, one of the things about writing is that, like Hemingway said, the first draft of anything is going to be total crap. So you have to realize you have to get the bad stuff out of your system and onto the page, and then you can edit it and fine tune it and tweak it and do whatever you need to do with it. And like I said, it takes a while to get there. But I've found that the more work I put into my writing, that each time it gets a little bit better. And that is also very confidence inspiring. So that is one way in which my own cheerleader that I think, okay, I need to get through this draft. And when I'm done, I'll go through with it. I'll take my red pen, I'll mark it up and just like what do I need to cut? What do I need to move? Oh, this scene would work better instead of page 6. It would work better on page 33. That it's an ongoing process. It's never ending, but I'm getting better with each time that I take a stab at it.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to promote Friday Night SmackDown when we come back. We are back from this commercial break. It's Friday night, and it isn't just about Friday, tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday. It is a Memorial Day weekend, and it isn't just about your average Memorial Day weekend. It's a wrestling Memorial Day weekend. Tonight, on USA Network, you get to see Friday Night SmackDown. The WWE Tag Team Champions will be in action. That's going to be a great main event tonight. 2 qualifying matches will be on the show as well. Tomorrow, if anyone's a fan of old school WWE, you're going to see WWE main event. John Cena will go against Ron Truth for the WWE Championship. Absolutely, that's going to be a great match. Seth Rollins will be teaming with Braun Breaker as he takes on CM Punk and Sami Zayn. You're going to see the World Heavyweight Champion Jey Uso take on Paul Logan. He's an average fighter, but I'm not really a fan of Paul Logan, to give him my 2 cents. But all that will be on WWE main event. And then Sunday, this show is to promote upcoming talent. So WWE NXT has 2 big matches. One will be for the NXT Women's World Heavyweight Championship, and also the North American title will be on the line. But making history, because WWE always likes puts in that glass envelope. For the first time ever in history, the TNA, their competition, the TNA World Champion Joe Hendricks will take on Trick Williams in the first time ever at the TNA title. Next thing I want to talk to you about is the book you created called Go Ahead and Ask Me, and it's on the screen as we're talking. Go Ahead and Ask Me, Volume 1. I love the picture of the typewriter. I suck at typing, but I always was a big fan of those typewriters.
hmm Well, I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So I have this screenwriting blog, Maximum Z. It's maximumz.blog. And about 10 years ago, so like 2014, 2015, I'd been doing a lot of just skimming the internet and seeing that every once in a while I'd get a script screenwriting consultant would pop up, and I'd look at their website, and I thought, you know what, I would love to ask each of these people a bunch of questions about writing. Like what's the last good thing you watched? Was it good? Was it bad? What do you think? Can good writing be taught, or is it something that you're just born with? What do you think about contests? And I thought, okay, well, I'll ask 10 questions. And of course, like I said, that 11th question is going to be, what's your favorite kind of pie? Because that's me. And so originally it was going to be 5 consultants, but the more research I did, the more people I found. So then that 5 grew to 50, 50. And so I had this, it was almost, so I published it, I posted one a week on my blog. So it was almost an entire year. And then, but I still had more people to interview. And so that 50 then became just over 100. But also I started including, like I said, filmmakers and writers in other mediums. I had a playwright. I had at the time, she was, I think, 16, and she had developed her own web comic. A few other people doing web comics. I had a playwright, another guy who wrote comic books. And it was just fascinating to get everybody's take, because everybody's origin story was different and their advice was different. There were a lot of similar themes throughout it. And so I had like 110 interviews, and I thought, I've got to do something with this. And I always wanted to put them out in book form. And originally it was going to be one collection, but if I put all of the interviews in one book, it would have been about 600 pages. And I think that's probably a little too much for people to take at a time. So then it was going to be 2 books. And I thought, okay, it's still too thick. So I decided, I think 3 books is a nice, good number. So that's how I ended up with 3 volumes of this book. And they're all available on Amazon. And like I said, so it's Go Ahead and Ask interviews about screenwriting and pie. Because, like I said, everybody loved that last question about the pie. Some people didn't take it seriously. Like one guy said, "Oh, my favorite's Hostess fruit pie." I was like, "That's boring." That's not what I said to him. That's just what I was thinking when I read his answer. But one guy said, my favorite was like this apple pie my grandmother made, and when I moved to Los Angeles, she always sent me like $5 extra a month so I could get a piece of pie somewhere. One guy, it was like, my favorite is Oreo pie, which I'd never heard of before. And a lot of people said, "Oh, I love pumpkin pie because it's perfect any time of year." And I thought that's true. So, and everybody who's read these and knows me, they say, "Well, what's your favorite kind?" I say, "Well, honestly, it's probably a tie between pumpkin and pecan." And I've said this before, probably one of the best apple pies I've ever had is one my in-laws make. They make like 8 or 10 a year, and they freeze them. And then so like when we come back to visit, they'll cook one out, and like half of it is for my brother-in-law, and one is for and half of that is for my daughter, and my wife and I each get a piece. They divvy it up all these different ways.
No, it sounds absolutely amazing. And it's funny, I love pumpkin, but unfortunately, well, it's funny you should mention that because I was always under the impression that pumpkin was seasonal. You can only get it through like October, November, and that's it. You have to wait
It,
a
you
whole
know,
year.
it used to be that way, but you can buy pumpkin any time of year, canned pumpkin. But we're lucky here that there's always a pumpkin patch in San Francisco. So I'll go and they'll sell sugar pumpkins, which some people have never heard of. That's the kind of pie or kind of pumpkin that you use to make pies. You roast it and you mash it up and you just mix it into the pie and just throw it in the oven. You're all set.
No, perfect. Hey,
hmm
we should do an episode about pie.
Oh, that's a dreamy topic.
So the next one I want to talk to you about is I'm gonna butcher this one, but it's called Fazoom.
Oh, Fazoom, yes. Yeah, so that's my fantasy comedy. It was originally called The Unlikeliest of Heroes, but a lot of people thought it was too unwieldy, and it wasn't appropriate for the script. It was good for the script, but it's a very family friendly kind of story. And Fazoom is a word that is used throughout the script, and people thought it was much more appropriate. So that is my most recent script, and I worked on that one for about 2 years, going through numerous drafts and getting lots and lots of feedback. And my pitch for it is that it's the Wizard of Oz in reverse, plus Mitchell's versus the Machines, a movie on Netflix that I absolutely loved. And so when they said, "What do you mean the Wizard of Oz in reverse?" Well, this one is about a novice witch from a magical land who ends up stuck in New Jersey without her magic. And everybody hears that, they think, "Oh, that sounds so funny." And so, which is kind of what I was hoping for. And I wrote that because part of my mantra about writing is I write stuff that I would want to watch. So, that's the kind of stuff I like to watch is, funny comedies uh, that are smart, that don't talk down to the audience. They don't go for cheap laughs. And like I'm a big influence on my sense of humor is, the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show. I just thought the writing on that was fantastic. That there were jokes that kids would get, but there were also jokes that adults would get, and kids would have no idea that it was a joke. The best one I could think of is that Rocky's strapped to a missile and it's launched, and the general says that squirrel is headed straight for Washington, and Bullwinkle says, "Do you think he can carry the farm vote?" And kids are not going to get that. I thought when I was a kid, I didn't get it either, but then I saw it again when I was an adult. I thought, oh my gosh, that's so funny. And so I have that kind of humor in my script, just a lot of, clever quips, but nothing too cerebral, I guess is the best way I can put it. So
Well,
I
that's
had so much fun writing that too, and responses to it have been great. So and the thing is that I originally wrote it with the intention of being animated, but a lot of people said, well, with the advances they've made in special effects, it could be live action. And my response is, well, one of the main characters is a talking cat, so maybe.
hey, never say never.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But the 80s and 90s always had a adult humor in it. And my brother always, I love He-Man, not in that way, but I love He-Man. But my brother always likes to make jokes about it later on. It's like, oh, look at He-Man. He's straddling the Man of Arms. It's like, don't ruin my childhood for me. But there's so many Rocko's Modern Life,
Hmm.
Animaniacs. There's one in Rugrats. I find it obnoxious now, but looking back, I was obsessed with it. There's a Passover episode where
Hmm.
Stu's reading from the book and he's mispronouncing words, and Dee Dee's giving him a hard time. And it's like, what? I'm reading it from the book. And it's like, one of the things is like herb. And it's like, Stu, it's not called herb, it's herbs. Then he got into a whole thing about, Dee Dee, to some people don't actually call it herb.
Hmm.
But it's you when you're younger, it goes right over your head. But when you watch it back, one of my favorites is the Tick.
Oh
And
yeah.
he says it so fast, but there's a scene where you remember, do you ever see the Tick?
I remember the cartoon version, but also I know they had a live action version. Actually, they did two of them because was with Patrick Warburton, and the other one was with a British actor who did a fantastic American accent. So I wasn't as into those, but I do remember the animated one.
That's the best one. Even though I do like Christopher Lloyd, he was in the live action one.
Hmm.
He says you can either be a moth or an idiot, but you can't be both. But in the cartoon, they go find his statue. It's kind of like a god figure. It's like you can access the all-wise, all knowing, powerful being in the universe. You can exit anything you want. Okay, how you doing? And it's and a giant thumb comes out of the ground. And the other favorite part, my sister likes this part. 'Cause I didn't catch it, but if you hit rewind and listen to it very carefully,
Hmm.
there's a part where he's beaten up by getting attacked by these short people. And he says it so fast, he says, goddamn midgets. And I'm like,
Wow.
well, this is a kid's cartoon. And did he just say that? But people now are too sensitive. But it's kind of like you can tell a joke, regardless of what the joke is, as long as it's positive and it's not hurtful. But the problem is, if you sneeze the wrong way, you're going to offend somebody.
Hmm.
Personally, I like the 80s and 90s, but I'm looking at this picture and I think it will be a terrific movie. And for the record, it's on the screen as we're talking. One woman takes on the Wild West. It does not stand a chance. And
Hmm.
you call it the Iron Horse of Lucy Steele.
Right. Yeah,
I
that
think that's a beautiful picture, number one. And what can you tell us about it?
that is the script I did before Fazoom. That's so yeah, the Iron Horse of Lucy Steele is my Western adventure. And the 5 second pitch for that one is it's a female Indiana Jones in the Wild West plus trains. And I mean, I love Westerns and I love action adventure like Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of my absolute favorite movies. And I just thought that what could I do that would be some kind of take on this genre that I love, but that is also a unique spin because that's a big thing with screenwriting is that you want to create something that's familiar but different. So like Star Wars was Flash Gordon, but in a different kind of way. And so I thought, well, I love Westerns and this is going to be a roundabout way of telling it. So I'm also a big fan of old time radio, like The Shadow and Jack Benny and all of that. And so there was this show called The Cisco Kid, which was a Western. And there was one episode where Cisco and Pancho had to help this woman. Her father ran a train freight company, but he had been killed by bandits. So she had taken over and was trying to, keep it going. And I remember hearing that and thinking, huh, a girl with a train. And that was the light bulb. And I thought, okay, so what could I do to this to make it, thrilling and a real popcorn adventure type of thing? And I just worked it. And so I came up with a story of like this real, two-fisted, kick-ass action hero who just happened to be a woman driving a train. And I mean, I did research like about train parts and engines and like what were different parts of the engine called and what's that thing in the back called. And also because I wanted it to be after the Civil War, so I was doing research. What could be a great story? What's the motivation? What is she trying to get? And so I came up with this idea that the new printing plates for the new dollar bill design were being shipped to San Francisco, and they're stolen by this bandit and this ruthless outlaw and his gang, but he steals her train to get them, and she is not going to take that lying down. So she kind of blazes a trail through the West to try and catch them to get them back. And she meets this bounty hunter who's kind of like the combination of the Han Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi type. He's seasoned, he's weathered, he's been around, he knows what's going on, and he also kind of helps her grow as a person. That she's got a lot of pent-up anger about her father who was killed when she was young, and so he kind of helps her navigate through that. And it was just a fun story to write. That is something also when you're reading something and you're having a great time reading it, you can tell that the writer had a good time writing it. Yeah, it may have taken a long time for them to do it, but the writer's love of the material should be evident on the page. Because a lot of times a writer, especially with screenplays, they'll think, "Oh, this thing is popular. I'll just write something, just I'm at a loss for words. I'll just write something that,
I have
just
that
kind of
effect
got
on
it.
people.
Yeah, so I'll just write something and that'll be good enough. But no, if you love the material, you will want to convey that love and you'll want the reader to love it as much as you do.
Last question I want to talk to you about is when I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what made you say yes? And how did you feel when you first read the message? Being brutally honest.
Okay. I was intrigued as to why somebody would want to talk to me. Uh, because I'm not an established name. I don't have any produced feature films, but I love to write and I love supporting especially the screenwriting community. And also, I'm a podcaster too. So if someone says, "Hey, I would love for you to come on my podcast," I'll be like, "Sure," because I know, guests are always welcome. And just the opportunity to talk about something I really love is just a great opportunity. And so the fact that you said, "Hey, I'd love to have you on," and I was like, "Well, what do you want me to talk about?" And you said, "Well, we'll talk about that before we start." And that was fine. Just that I love talking about this and I love getting to hear from other creative types. Like, what is it about their creativity that they love doing? And why do they do it? And what is it that keeps them going? And when someone comes to me and asks the same questions, I think, hey, that sounds like it would be fun to do.
Absolutely. I do have a couple of questions for you off the air. Our goal for this episode is 500 views. This will be streaming on the longest streaming platform, YouTube. But the Keith Andrew Network is the longest streaming, undefeated talk show host with a disability, because I haven't met another talk show host with a disability, so I'm not hold on to that title. But the Keith Andrew Network's been streaming on YouTube for the past 12 years. Until the day I die, it will continue. It will be streamed on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Our goal is to reach 500 and more views. Once we do that, we could definitely do a part 2. But wrapping up, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest. And until we meet again, I catch you later. Thank you, and have a good night.